saw a woman look finer, I used to order just to watch her float across the floor. She grew up in a small town, never put her roots down. Daddy always kept moving, so she did too. And somewhere on a desert highway, she rides a Harley Davidson, her long blonde hair flying in the wind. And she's been running half her life, the chrome and steel she rides, colliding with the very air she breathes, the air she breathes. Well, you know it ain't easy. You've got to hold on. She was an unknown legend in her time, and now she's dancing to kids, looking for that magic kiss. Who gets that far away look in her eyes? And somewhere on a desert highway, she rides a Harley Davidson, her long blonde hair flying in the wind. And she's been running half her life, the chrome and steel she rides, colliding with the very air she breathes, the air she breathes. Somewhere on a desert highway, she rides a Harley Davidson, her long blonde hair flying in the wind. And she's been running half her life, the chrome and steel she rides, colliding with the very air she breathes, the air she breathes. Thank you. This is Robert Reeder. I'm James Moore. Thanks for coming out. Jfan night, always special. I don't know if you saw Neil Young on Stephen Colbert last night, but he was asked, you know, when George Bush invaded Iraq, you said we should impeach him. Now Barack Obama's invaded Iraq. Should we impeach him? He said, nope. But we should impeach him for not stopping fracking. Speaking of Neil Young, cinnamon girl. Somehow I need another chance. You see, your baby loves to dance. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Now, this is a song, we just have a record that came out, Robert Reeder, called The Album. We're going to be selling that as well. $5 of every sale going straight to Jfan. We're really pleased to be able to support that way. And Robert Reeder, this is a song off the next album.
If any of you remember our old group Sage, it's a song we used to do way back. It's called Journey of Love. It's actually inspired by a Tagore poem. Are you out on this stormy night, on the journey of love, my friend? The sky cracks and moans like it's in despair. There'll be no sleeping tonight, ever and again. Open up my door and look out into the darkness. I'm looking for you, my friend, but I can see nothing before me. I wonder, where could you be? By what dim show of the black river do you follow? On your way to come to me, my darling one. Through what dark maze do you travel? On your way to come to me, on the journey of love. 2, 3. Well, there's a move I'm making, sneaking slowly across the room. Might be a rule I'm breaking, might think I'm moving out too soon. Slow, hauling, yeah, it's sneaky, sneaky me. Hey, no, mama, where'd you put my walking shoes? Well, there's a sound I'm hearing as I'm sneaking toward the door. Be careful, careful not to wake up nobody on the squeaky boarded floor. Easy does it, I'm up on tippy, tippy toe. Hey, mama, where'd you put them walking shoes? They were right here by the door last time I looked. Well, there's a shadow in the night, sneaking all around this house. Don't want that old night owl to catch me sneaking around here like a mouse. I'm slow, hauling, yeah, it's sneaky, sneaky me. Hey, now mama, where'd you put my walking shoes? Come on, play it for me now. Well, that old sneak, I'll holler, snuck up and took me by surprise. Swooping down on me like that with those big brown eyes. Easy does it, I'm up on tippy, tippy toe. Looking for my walking shoes. I've been looking all over the house, you know that. Can't find them anywhere. Hey, baby, you know that I love you so darn much. Oh, yes, I truly, truly do. Come on, let's make some breakfast. Have a little tea. Come on, come on, come on now. That's better. That pretty little kitty cat smile that I love so much. Well, I'd never leave you. You know that. Chingy, chingy, chingy.
One more song, and then we'll get the night going here. Thank you very much. These last two are off the album, although these are decidedly banjo versions. The album's full ensemble with the Hurlin brothers and recorded at Tim Britton's studio. But we really appreciate what Jfan is doing and what you all are doing coming out here to support this very important work. It was a really great honor to interview Winona Howder at the station, crew station. And yeah, let's get fired up. I think we can do this, folks.
Yes, I think I can do this. I can make it work out all right. I can get up off the floor. I can love you more and more. Loosening up these shackles, making a run for the goal in a perfect world. This love that will never go home. Oh, well, it's starting to happen. There's no limit in sight. The sun and the moon are dancing tonight. Hold on, there's a new day breaking. But the kind of love that unfolds slowly makes everything work out in the end. It takes courage, I know it's hard to let go of the things we hold to. Let it fly to the wind in a flurry of angel wings and kind forgiveness. Oh, well, it's starting to happen. There's no limit in sight. The sun and the moon are dancing tonight. Well, yes, I think I can do this. I can make it work out alright. I can get up off the floor. I can love you more and more. Courage, I know it's hard to let go of the things we hold to. Let it fly to the wind in a flurry of angel wings and kind forgiveness. Oh, well, it's starting to happen. There's no limit in sight. The sun and the moon are dancing tonight. It's starting to happen. There's no limit in sight. The sun and the moon are dancing tonight.
Yes, we can do it.
Robert and James are singer-songwriters that have been consistently dazzling Fairfield audiences with their indie folk rock performances. Both are founding board members of the Fairfield Musicians Club and perform together in an acoustical group called Sage. Robert Reeder's first solo record called The Album was released in September. He was the staff songwriter for many years in LA, and his songs have been recorded by the Everly Brothers, Bette Midler, Glenn Campbell, and others. James Moore is the co-founder of the solar-powered KRUU FM 100.1 local community radio station. And more recently of the Fairfest musical celebration here in town. He plays with the Jefferson County Green Band and the Apocalypso Tritanic Boys Choir, and is an adjunct professor at MUM University. Reeder's records will be on sale in the lobby, and $5 of every sale of a CD goes to the Jfan organization to help support our cause. So another big round of applause for our musicians, Jimmy and Robert, here tonight. I'm John Eichert. I'm a member of the Jfan Board of Directors, and they've asked me to be your host for this evening. Thank you. On behalf of the Jfan Board, I want to welcome each of you to the Jefferson County Farmers and Neighbors Annual Meeting. Both those of you who have driven from a long way to come into town, I appreciate you being here, as well as the folks from here in Fairfield. Now, we have a very fast-moving, event-filled agenda here tonight of 90 minutes. And we've got the program planned for you at 90 minutes, and if you stick with us for that period of time, I promise you I'm going to do everything in my power to keep the program moving and keep it on time. We're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers following the the formal program here tonight, and you'll have slips of paper provided to you at the break where you can ask questions and we'll respond to them here from the panel. So if you have questions, just keep those in mind and write them down as we go through. First, I'd like to introduce some people here tonight. I'd like to introduce the members of the Jfan board and a select group of collaborators here on the stage and supporters that we've asked to join us here on the stage tonight so we can give them specific recognition. Okay, on the stage, the Jfan board, I'd like to introduce first, and I'll just call your names, and if you'd all stand and then stay standing, we'll do that. We'll start with Jim Rubus, who's our emeritus professor, emeritus status board member right now. And other than Jim, if you would hold your applause till we get through, it would be very helpful because we got quite a few people to get introduced here tonight. So if you just stand up, Chris Bush, let's see, Deb Chance, Jocelyn Ingman, I'm on the board, Jonathan Rudney, David Sykes, Francis Tickey, Bob Walls. Are all of you standing up here? Everybody standing up? Good. You can give them a hand. Give them a round of applause. The people not on the stage here tonight, but also on the board, are Diane Rosenberg, who you'll meet later, Rick Sams, who's the timekeeper and taking care of other things, Robert Swanson at registration, and Dean Darnson, that's a new board member who's here with us tonight. So, and then not being able to be here with us tonight are a couple of other board members, Alan Marks and Clyde Cleveland. So we're very proud of the Jfan board, and they support the organization and make the decisions in terms of everything that it's done. Okay, they've asked me to make a few opening remarks, which I'll do here tonight. And I'm going to start by telling you that in addition to being a Jfan board member, that I'm a retired professor of agricultural economics from the University of Missouri. I grew up on a small farm in South Missouri. I spent my entire life, professional life, working with farmers and other people who live and work in rural communities. My wife Ellen and I moved here about 2.5 years ago, and one of the reasons that we moved here is because I wanted to spend my latter years living in a small town rather than a city. And Jfan, the existence of Jfan was an important part of the reason, or a significant part for me moving here, because I simply wouldn't live in a rural area today that didn't have a strong local organization that was committed to protecting the public health and the environment of that community from the threats that's posed by confinement animal feeding operations. My involvement with CAFOs began some 20 years ago, back in the mid-1990s, when I was working with a group of farmers in North Missouri who were concerned about a large corporate CAFO operation that was moving into their areas. They asked me to look into it, which I agreed to do. And the more I learned about CAFOs, the more I shared their concerns. And I've been working with similar groups ever since, for 20 years now, in 16 different states, 4 different provinces of Canada, and more recently in the country of Wales. Now, we certainly haven't won all the battles over those years, but we've won the hearts and minds of a lot of people in the process. And it seemed like the expansion of CAFOs had kind of leveled out after they had taken over the pork and poultry industry. But more recently, in the last couple of years, the expansion has started again. It's being fueled by exports of pork to China, and more recently by lower corn prices. But the Iowa in particular, and southeast Iowa, has been singled out and targeted by the CAFOs as an area for expansion for a number of different reasons. And because of this, because we're being targeted, we at Jfan have concluded that it's time to change business as usual, and that's the theme of our conference here tonight. It's no longer enough to rely on government to enforce the regulations on CAFOs because the corporate operators of the CAFOs have too much political influence in Des Moines and in Washington, D.C. So it's time to change business as usual in regulating CAFOs. We can no longer depend upon voluntary compliance and people being good neighbors to protect us from CAFOs. Because there's too many CAFOs that are owned by people that don't even live in the communities where their CAFOs are located, and many of those people are even from out of state. So it's time to change business as usual in negotiating with CAFO operators to be good neighbors. It's time to tell the truth. And as more people learn the truth, there's growing opposition to CAFOs all across the country. And the family farming operations are being used as frontmen, the family farmers used as frontmen in a massive public relations campaign that's a multi-million-dollar campaign sponsored by the big CAFO corporations, and they try to use the positive image of traditional family farms to deceive people into supporting or at least tolerating CAFOs as simply being the natural evolution of family farms. Nothing could be farther from the truth. These CAFOs are not family farms. They're factory farms. They're not farms. They're strictly businesses, period. Real farming is not just a way to make money. It's a way of life. Now, farmers obviously have to make a living on the farm, but real farmers care about their neighbors. They care about the land, and they care about their customers. A real farmer, the real farmers, they're not going to threaten the public health, and they're not going to destroy the quality of life of their neighbors just because it's profitable to do so. Factory farms, CAFOs are the epitome of factory farms, and factory farms are simply industrial businesses. A CAFO is an industry. It treats the animals as biological machines, and it creates tons of toxic waste. CAFOs are known and shown by science to create more than 300 chemical and biological contaminants that threaten the pollution of the air and the water of the communities in which they locate. They have been shown when the waste from these operations are spread in the concentrations that are typical of CAFOs that they are a threat to public health. A CAFO that's 2,500 head of hogs, for example, which is virtually unregulated in the state of Iowa, will produce as much biological waste as a town or a city, a municipality of 8,500 to 10,000 people. And the raw sewage is spread on the fields without treatment. And as I said, in the quantities that it's spread, it is a risk to public health within that community. It's time to stop and change business as usual when we're dealing with the waste from these animal factories. Contrary to the corporate PR, CAFOs also represent a significant risk to the consumers that consume the products. Recalls of animal products, of meat and eggs in particular, that are contaminated with E. coli and salmonella have become almost routine. And even more bothersome, the many strands of the bacteria that are found in the contaminated products are resistant to multiple antibiotics, such as the MRSA-resistant bacteria. And MRSA now kills more people in the United States than does AIDS. And CAFOs are known to be ideal breeding grounds for antibiotic resistance because of the feeding of low levels of antibiotics in these particular operations. It's way past time to change business as usual when it comes to regulating the feeding of antibiotics to animals in CAFO operations. CAFOs deprive people of their basic rights to a clean and healthy environment, but they are also inherently inhumane to the animals that are raised in CAFOs. It's not really the operator's fault. They simply crowd too many animals in spaces that are too small to allow for humane treatment. On a recent trip, I had an opportunity to go to Poland, and I had an opportunity to visit a concentration turned extermination camp near the city of Lublin. And when I saw the the barracks, the rows of barracks where the people were lined up awaiting their trip to the gas chamber, I was reminded of the rows of chicken houses and hog houses that dot Iowa today. Folks, there are no humane concentration camps, extermination camps. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's morally or ethically right. It's time to change business as usual in the treatment of farm animals. Jfan supports family farms. We've always supported the people that have the traditional family farm values, and there's plenty of alternatives out there with people that have those values today to the CAFOs, and the number of alternatives are growing with the growing public concern. We support the farmers out here that have pasture-raised products, grass-based farms, and free-range and organic and other sustainable systems of animal husbandry. We're for family farms. These are family farmers that spread the manure back on the land where the crops are grown in amounts where it can decompose naturally and provide healthy food for the plants rather than simply be polluted in the air and water. These are the kind of operations that produce naturally nutritious food, and they don't rely on antibiotics because they keep their animals healthy through the ways that they treat the animals. They respect their neighbors. They respect their animals and treat them humanely. These are a whole new group of farmers that know it's time to change business as usual in farming, and we're committed to supporting those farmers. Jfan is committed by meeting this new challenge with an aggressive educational program that's based not on fantasies or trickery or PR or propaganda, but is based on simply telling the truth. CAFOs either must be effectively regulated or eliminated and replaced with sustainable farming systems. We are confident that we can ultimately win the hearts and the minds of the people simply by telling the truth, even if that isn't the usual way to do business today. It's no more business as usual. It's time to change business as usual. In the meantime, we're committed to working with rural people in southeast Iowa and across the state and elsewhere to protect their basic human rights to a clean and safe environment, a healthy environment, their basic rights of self-determination and self-defense when they feel threatened by CAFOs moving into their particular community. And that action includes supporting local people like the people here tonight in legal action when it's necessary to protect themselves from the public health risk associated with CAFOs. It's time to change business as usual, and Jfan is committed to doing just that. We appreciate your help in being here tonight. Now, if I can get my papers shifted around, Jim, I understand, you know, it's kind of hard to keep these papers shifted around up here and find out which right page you're on. But anyway, I would like to introduce another group of people, the special guests that are here on the stage other than the board members. And again, I'll ask you to stand up and stay standing, and we'll give you the applause at the end. Some of these people you will meet later, but I'd ask them to go ahead and stand anyway. Our keynote speaker from Food and Water Watch, Winona Horder. Also from Food and Water Watch is, you can give her a hand. Also from Food and Water Watch is Matt Olaf. Charlie Spears, the head of the Spears Law Firm, he'll be on the program later. And from the Charlie Spears firm is Charlie Miller, Andrew Kowalski, Karen Swiss, all right, and Richard Middleton from the Middleton Law Firm. He'll be on the program later also. And with him, we have fans out here. With him is Scott Harrison from the Middleton Law Firm. We also have some dignitaries from the public sector here tonight. We have Damian Conan, mayor of McCausland, Iowa, on the stage, involved with some of the groups that are caring for the law firm. We have John Merrick, mayor of Malcolm, Iowa. We have Chris Peterson and his wife Christy from the SRAP, or Sustainable Agriculture, Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, works across the country, and Eric Swafford from Humane Society of the U.S., who we're collaborating with on many of the things here. All right, and next, if I could introduce a key person within the organization who will be coming up next, is Diane Rosenberg. Diane Rosenberg is the executive director of the Jfan organization. She not only is the one who actually carries out virtually everything that Jfan does, she's also a strong voice on the board of directors in deciding what Jfan is going to do. Diane first learned about factory farming problem in 2004 when she was editor-in-chief of a weekly newspaper called the Heartland Spirit. She ran several articles educating the public about CAFOs and about the formation of Jfan. Diane joined the Jfan board of directors in 2007, was hired as the executive director in 2009, and although she works nearly full-time for Jfan, she's also a part-time consultant with the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project that I just mentioned. That's a national organization that fights CAFOs all across the country. This allows her to help neighborhood groups beyond Jefferson County who want to organize against CAFOs. So please join me in expressing your appreciation for Diane Rosenberg.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Wow. I didn't expect that. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I want to thank John for just a fabulous talk. I could listen to John all the time. He's always so inspiring and right on point, and thank you. I want to say, too, about John, how fortunate we are to have him on the Jfan board of directors. He's so highly respected and sought out all over the world for all the work that he does. And I just want to share one really special thing that's happening for him in a very illustrious career. Later this month, John is going to be traveling to Rome to present a paper on family farming in North America at the request of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And this is in recognition of the International Year of the Family Farm. So, well done. Now, am I getting an echo, or is this okay? Okay. So tonight I want to talk about how Jfan is rising up to meet the challenges of this growing CAFO expansion we're seeing. But first, before I do that, as most of you probably know by now, there have been changes within the Jfan board. Jim Rubis retired from the Jfan board of directors this month, and Jfan elected David Sykes as our new president. So for a few minutes, I want to talk about Jim. Without a doubt, Jfan would not be where it is today without Jim Rubis. In his 9 years as Jfan president, Jim played an important role in representing Jfan and helping us reach out to a broad cross-section of the Jefferson County community. Jim is one of Jfan's founders. He was sought out during Jfan's formation because the early organizers recognized his strong leadership qualities. They respected his strong commitment to community service work, and they appreciated his deep connections within all segments of the Jefferson County community. In addition, Jim had a farming background, and that brought an invaluable understanding of agricultural issues and a connection with the farming community. Now, Jim didn't just join Jfan. He courageously stepped up into the president's position to serve as that critical bridge into the many distinct communities that Jefferson County has. Now, this was a unique role in a unique community that no one else was really stepping up to undertake. In that role, Jim served as a conduit, arranging and facilitating meetings between CAFO owners and concerned citizens. He met with neighborhood groups, and his calm presence was a source of support and knowledge for them. Jim's friendliness and openness kept the lines of communication open between the corporate agricultural community and Jfan, and that led to some CAFO owners building their confinements away from neighbors because they understood how the local community felt. And Jim has told me that's one of his most satisfying accomplishments with Jfan. Now, Jim may be retiring from active service, but we're not losing him. Jfan will remain involved with, Jim will remain involved with Jfan as our first emeritus board member. And personally, having worked so closely with Jim over these years, I'm really grateful for that. Now, Jim's retirement has inspired us to develop something new, the Jfan Good Neighbor Award, to honor a steward of the land dedicated toward creating a better agricultural future for all. So, on behalf of the Jfan Board of Directors, I would like to present Jim with our first Good Neighbor Award and our Jfan tote bag. And this award is in honor, and this is what it says, honor of his selfless and dedicated community service in protecting the quality of life of Jefferson County residents and the environment. This is for Jim.
You know what I'd really like to see is that a few years from now, the entire Jfan organization could retire. Making the decision was pretty hard for me. I actually started thinking about it more than a year ago and considered it and kept going back and forth. Having Diane here is one of the main reasons that I feel comfortable in taking more of a backseat role. And one of the goals that I had, or one of the things that I hope my departure might have, has already really taken shape, and that is that I hope to see some new energy and activation. Not that the current board doesn't have plenty. They have, and they are continuing to work hard. But we've got 5 new board members now, and this increased number of people, the new ideas, and the increased energy, I think, will more than make up for my departure. Really appreciate the members of the board for presenting me with this award. And as Diane said, I'm not leaving the battle. I'm just taking a different phase. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, as I mentioned, Jfan is stepping up to meet the challenges of this CAFO expansion in a number of ways. I'm going to tell you what we've got up our sleeve. The first is reflected in our new leadership. The Jfan board unanimously elected Attorney David Sykes as Jfan's new president. This is to send a firm message to the corporate pork industry that CAFOs will not be tolerated in Jefferson County. David is Jfan's legal counsel. He's been for many years, and I've worked closely with him during that time. And I can tell you we are very fortunate to have someone of his intelligence, insights, passion, and energy as Jfan's president. We've also added 5 powerful new members to the Jfan board, representing the farming, rural, business, and residential communities. And this is Deb Chance, Dean Drasnin, Jocelyn Engman, Bob Walls, and Clyde Cleveland. Each brings an enormous reservoir of perspectives, talents, skills, and community reach that will go a long way in strengthening our efforts. Jfan is currently exploring a wide range of new tactics and initiatives in the area of education and information. This is because an educated and aware community is an empowered community. It's a community that can identify a CAFO problem and it knows what to do when one encroaches. As part of this approach, we're reevaluating the materials that we send to neighbors in their 2-mile radius of new CAFOs. We want these materials to be even stronger, so neighbors are really clear why they need to protect themselves from factory farms and how Jfan can help. This may empower more community groups to stand up to the threat in their neighborhood. As John mentioned, there's a massive PR campaign being waged by industry and commodity groups that equates factory farms with independent family farms, that claims they are environmental stewards and care about humane livestock production. This campaign is deceptive and it's false. Jfan will be addressing this misinformation campaign with new educational and informational programs that speak the truth. Our outreach efforts will attempt to help citizens make decisions based on truth when they shop, when they vote, and when faced with a CAFO in their neighborhood. Now, Jfan also understands that the factory farming problem is not just a Jefferson County problem. It's a regional problem, it's a state problem, and it's a federal problem, as Winona Howder will talk about tonight. We've always worked with state and national organizations such as Food and Water Watch, CCI, and SRAP, among others. We've worked with these organizations, and this has deepened our knowledge and increased our ability to help community groups organize. Now Jfan is actively reaching out to a broad base of national, state, and local organizations to take that even further. We've organized meetings with 35 national, state, and local organizations this past year to address the factory farming issue. We know that to protect Jefferson County, we need to go beyond our borders. Along that line, Jfan is developing a training program that will teach groups in other counties how to create an organization like Jfan so they can better protect their communities. We would like to see a group like Jfan in every single Iowa county. There is strength in numbers, and working with local groups allows us to share information and experience and collectively makes us all more powerful. Finally, I want to talk about legal action. Jfan advocates that neighbors should try to stop CAFOs by first talking to the owners, going through the regulatory process, and exploring a host of other options. Sometimes these work, but mostly they don't. And when all efforts fail, Jfan strongly recommends legal action and will continue to do so. We are fortunate in Iowa that we have nuisance and trespass laws that allow communities to fight back against CAFOs. With that said, it's a sad state of affairs that the Iowa legislature churns out laws and regulations so weak and ineffective that a CAFO has to get built and cause harm, and communities have to turn to legal action for relief. I'm sure the 200+ plaintiffs that are sitting in this audience tonight would rather live peacefully protected by more stringent regulations and siting laws than need to seek out a legal solution. Nonetheless, legal action is effective. From speaking to many people in the county, I can tell you that numerous CAFOs did not get built in Jefferson County because people did not want to tangle with Jfan, and they were afraid of a stressful and a costly lawsuit. Jfan is not committed to any one legal team to the exclusion of the other. However, we are very fortunate that we have a dynamic team in Iowa that takes cases on a contingency fee basis, and they are here to talk with us tonight. Charlie Spear, Richard Middleton, and David Sykes. To conclude, I want to encourage you to stand with Jfan and do everything in your power to work with us to fight back against more factory farms in Jefferson County. There are many things you can do: responding to action alerts, seeking out ways to make your voice heard. If a CAFO comes into your neighborhood, contact us and see how we can help. Learn about every candidate's stance on factory farming and get out and vote in this upcoming election. And support independent family farmers by purchasing pastured-raised meat products whenever possible. And finally, do everything you can to broaden your knowledge about the factory farming issue and share this information with others, because an educated and an informed community is an empowered community. And empowered, we can work together to keep more factory farms out of Jefferson County. Thank you.
Thank you. Aren't we really fortunate to have her? In light of the upcoming election, I would like to, and I want to encourage you all, second what Diane said, get out and vote, inform yourself. We're not trying to tell anybody how to vote. We're just saying inform yourself, learn the truth, and then vote accordingly. But I'd like to introduce some state officials or public officials, local officials as well, that are in the audience tonight. There may be some candidates here, but we're not introducing candidates. We're introducing these people as our elected representatives right now. Whether or not they continue to be that way is up to you. But I want to introduce our state representative, Kurt Hansen. If you would get up and kind of let people know you're here. State Senator Mark Chelgren. Jefferson County Supervisor Becky Smith. Wapello County Supervisor Steve Siegel. Muskegon County Supervisor Tom Furlong, or Muscatine, I'm sorry, I wrote it down wrong. Mayor of Fairfield, Ed Malloy. And Mayor of Bay City, John Hagelin, Dr. John Hagelin. Thank you all for serving the public in your roles here today. I would also like to introduce, or at least recognize, I'm not necessarily introducing individuals from it, but I'd like to recognize the co-sponsors of our program here tonight. Our co-sponsors are the Leopold Group Sierra Club, solar-powered KRUU FM radio, the Radish Magazine, and the Little Village Magazine. Next, I want to introduce our new president, David Sykes. He's an Iowa general practicing attorney. He is licensed to practice law in all of Iowa state and federal courts and is a member of the Iowa Bar. He was a founding board member of Jfan and has always been Jfan's legal counsel. David has represented Iowans fighting CAFOs for the last 5 years, including the plaintiffs in the Pleasant Plain lawsuit nearby here, which was settled to the satisfaction of the plaintiffs in 2010. Last spring, David formed the Iowa legal team with nationally renowned environmental attorneys Charlie Spear and Rachel Middleton, who we've introduced and you'll hear from later tonight. I'm going to keep my remarks short so David can tell you the rest of what he wants you to know about him, in addition to what he wants to tell you as our new president. Thank you very much, David. Come on up.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. I'd like to just tell you all it's a great pleasure to be here tonight. It's a great honor. Jim, I'm going to do my best to fill some big shoes, and it's a privilege to sit with you again on stage. I'd like to thank all of our guests for coming, our special guests, and so many people in the audience I'm going to introduce a little later when we get to the legal summary. I promised myself I was not going to write a speech, that I was going to just take the day. We've had seminars all day long with our legal group, and I just wanted to speak a little bit more from my heart than a canned speech. I think I'd like to start off and just say that everything that John and Diane said, the three of us are on the same page. We've met 3 or 4 times in the last few weeks, and we divided up what we were going to say because we all had the same feelings. And so everything that John said and everything that Diane said, they speak for myself and they also speak for the board. I think it's very clear right now in Jefferson County, southeast Iowa, that we are under a very serious CAFO threat. Davis County to our south, Washington County to our north, each have about 1 million CAFO hogs. Jefferson County, a few years ago, had 50,000 hogs, and in the last 2 years has doubled to about 90,000. Now, we're still okay, but if you do the simple math and you recognize that with cheaper corn prices and the fact that Smithfield was sold to the Chinese and all of that CAFO meat is now going to China, there is an enormous market for the CAFO industry to expand, and expand they are. Our area is in between two or three very high density CAFO counties, and we are under a serious watch. In the last 4 months or so, we're aware that 8 new CAFOs have been detected by our weekly DNR watch. They are just a little bit outside of the major areas of population, but nonetheless, here they are. We believe further that due to the efforts of Jfan, and I would hope to some degree the efforts of our legal team, that we have stopped many more CAFOs from showing up. That's the danger that we may have prevented and will not know about. But 8 came, and more are planned. So with everything that we're saying tonight and all of the very positive plans that we are outlining to you and all of the things that we think we will accomplish in the next year, I speak very sincerely to all of the residents of Fairfield and Jefferson County that this is something that we all need to take very seriously. We take for granted that we have a quality of life that is second to none, and so many of us have lived here for decades, but this is at risk. And I've struggled very deeply over the past 6 months how much to share with the community of what I know, trying to balance a sense of not alarming people and creating fear and anxiety, balanced on the other hand of awakening a very powerful and dynamic population that should join with all of us and protect everything that's dear. So trying to keep a balance, I'm telling you that we are in it, and we're seriously in it. And the problem is with this type of insidious situation is you don't get a second chance. In other words, once it's upon you, it's very, very difficult to get back what is lost. So we need to be proactive, prevention-oriented to stop it before it gets here. In the last 3 months or 4 months, maybe longer, everyone knows about the Heartland grain elevator situation. And it was something that came to town, and the community reacted in an unbelievably powerful way because it was something very physical and tangible, and you could see it. You could see it starting to build. Well, the CAFOs are a little bit more insidious. You don't see them if they're not in your backyard. They can be miles away. They could go up very quickly, and the impact may not hit you in your neighborhood. But all of a sudden, other neighborhoods are being hit. So I say to you sincerely that as I outline and as we continue to outline all of the very positive measures that we are taking to combat this threat, it's going to take all of us. And so please take this seriously. I support Jfan, and be as proactive in your communities, in your neighborhoods, in your subdivisions as you can, because this is a precious quality of life that we certainly are not intending to give up. Diane and John both mentioned some of the bigger things we're doing. I'm just going to say that I concur. We've strengthened our board enormously. We are increasing the power and tenacity of our warning letters. When CAFOs are announced, Jfan sends warning letters to all residents within a 2-mile radius of that operation. Those letters are going to be intensified with more information, more action steps, and alerting that community what can be done. We're going to increase education. We're going to increase resources to support traditional family farm and livestock operations that are more traditional farming endeavors. Turning to another corner, I was thinking, what would I like to say to you? I think it was from a TV show or some ad, but it goes something like this. I'm mad as hell, and I can't take it anymore. As I say that, in my mild-mannered way, I would like you to presume there's a table here. I jumped up on it. I started screaming and throwing my arms and said that as loud as I could. So the question is, why am I as mad as hell and can't take it anymore? Well, let me give you a couple reasons. Number one, these large corporate interests that don't even live in Iowa are coming in and treating our state like a toilet. They come in and they absolutely ignore the rights of neighbors, decency, consideration, all the things that Midwesterners hold so dear, treating their neighbors with decency and dignity. These things go out the window. I've sat in depositions where, to my surprise, the other side, the defense counsel, are asking traditional farmers that have farmed the land for decades, asking them questions like, so you, Mr. Smith, have 50 cattle on your property? Well, yes. And you want to increase your herd from 50 to 70? Well, yes. And you have dogs on the property? Yes. And you want to add more dogs because you like dogs? Well, yeah. And you have horses? Yeah, I have horses. And so you don't think you need to go to your neighbors and get their permission to add the extra hogs, dogs, and horses? And the farmer says, well, no, not really. So then the lawyer follows up. Well, why do you think then that my client, the CAFO operator that has 5,000 hogs, has to get your permission to go from 5,000 to 7,500? And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, they're actually taking this seriously. That's somehow a quid pro quo. That's the same standard. Increasing, on the land with hundreds of acres, animals to graze is now going to be equated, well, that's the same standard for my confined animal feeding operation. So the guy said, what do you think, Mr. Smith? And Mr. Smith said, well, the only difference is your situation stinks. Another reason I'm upset is that as you meet some of our clients later, and I'm kind of holding back introducing a very incredible group of people, I'm mad that these people feel they can come into Batavia, Iowa, and build a 10,000 head CAFO a mile from downtown. I'm mad that these same folks, different groups, come into McCausland, Iowa, and build a 25 head CAFO a half a mile from the western border of a 350 population town. And on and on and on. And somehow they feel empowered to do this simply because the legislature says you can do this. Is it right? Is it moral? Is it decent? Is it humane? No. I'm mad because I think about the land and I think about the animals. And I think that in my heart of hearts that we are to be the stewards of the land and the shepherds of the animals. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Isn't that what all the traditional religions talk about? That's the role of humanity? Are we doing that? Well, we're not. Moving on, Jfan is going to do literally everything in its power to help every community group that asks for our help, whether in Jefferson County or beyond. Jfan has developed a reputation of reaching out and helping its neighbor. We're helping in neighboring counties that touch on us physically, and in helping them, we believe we're helping ourselves. We're helping you. In order for this to happen, there are a few things that need to be done. The communities have to organize themselves. In other words, yes, Jfan is moving forward. Yes, we have a good legal team. But that only works if we have community groups to help. In other words, we can't organize for you. We can't do this for you. You have to meet us halfway. And if you meet us halfway, and if after tonight you meet some of the incredible community groups that have gone through tremendous struggle successfully to be here and to show you what they're doing to stand up, we're going to have to do that more and more. Community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and we have to not wait until the CAFO is being built. We have to know that they're coming, and it would be a good idea to create a community watch, to have a meeting, to make statements, to let people know that we're organized and we're not going to take this lightly. That's your job. I have a sidebar that I'd like to mention. For years, it's been this attitude that Jfan, well, a bunch of city slickers, not really farmers, folks that we oppose say that, they're the farmers and whatever. Well, I have a few pieces of information to mention. In my role as an attorney with a lot of clients now, 99% of our hundreds of clients are all rural Iowa residents. There are no city slickers. These are the citizens of Iowa who we are representing and protecting. That's what Jfan and all of our legal efforts in my practice with Charlie and Richard are doing. And then, just for any members of our loyal I think is a generous term, opposition that are here tonight, any members of our Farm Bureau, I had some new news. I was recently asked to become, and there's a case coming, there's a class action suit, a national class action suit, that is going to be bringing a lawsuit against a large GMO seed company for destroying or injuring Iowa corn operators from selling corn to China. And it's going to be a $1 zillion suit. And thanks to my good friend Charlie Spear, lo and behold, I'm going to represent all of the corn farmers in Iowa. So I don't think you could call me a city slicker either. In closing, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to tell you and pledge to you that I will do the absolute best that I can to the limits of my ability, both as the president of Jfan and working with the board and in my private practice to bring this situation to a good ending in the coming years. And I can just pledge that to you from the depth of my heart. But I don't want anyone to take this casually. We need to do this together. I cannot emphasize how we have to come together in the coming weeks and months and educate one another. Time and time again, I'm walking down the streets of Fairfield and I bump into friends and they say, what's going on, what's happening? And I mention Jfan. Sometimes they say, well, who's Jfan? And then I say, well, it's an organization trying to stop CAFOs. What's a CAFO? I mean, kick me. How is that possible? But it happens. So we need to educate. We need to communicate. We cannot assume. I thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you in a few minutes with a very rousing legal report with my dynamic duo that are here waiting. Thank you very much.
We're running a little behind our schedule, but I wasn't going to get up here and shove the president off of the podium, so I got to take my place here. I want to introduce I introduced the co-sponsors earlier. I want to introduce the corporate sponsors of the program, which we appreciate very much. We really appreciate the support from all of the folks that help make the program possible and the things that we do possible. The platinum sponsors of the program, and these are in your program if you want to look at them later, the Maharishi Ayurvedic Product International. The gold sponsors, David E. Sykes, PC, Attorney at Law, Radiance Dairy, Social Responsible Agriculture Project, and the Raj. All right? Our silver sponsors is Aaron Lifestyle Technology, Bob and Kay Ferguson, Shackley Distributors, Centerpoint Investment Strategies, Fairfield Accounting Service, Tim Hawthorne, and Leigh Snuzzle Hawthorne. Our bronze sponsors is Bluefish, Green Building Supply, Green Gourmet, Leopold Group, Sierra Club, Radiance Health Imaging, the Global ID Group, and the Organic Non-GMO Report. So let's thank all of our corporate sponsors. You notice that Cargill and Monsanto and people like that didn't make our list. They didn't get our letter, I guess, or something. But anyway, talking about sponsors and raising money, I'd like to introduce Chris Bush. Chris is a member of the Jfan Board of Directors as well as a member of the management team that started the David Lynch Foundation in 2005. That organization was founded by the award-winning film director David Lynch to make training in transcendental meditation available to at-risk and underserved populations. Chris will take a few minutes to tell you more about how you can help support the ongoing work of Jfan. Chris? There you are, over here.
Thank you. I'll take only a few minutes since we're behind schedule. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm just dressed like one tonight. And by the way, David, I'm mad as hell. I won't take it anymore. That was Peter Finch and Patty Chayefsky's network. Or all you people, movie fans, curious to know. So I have the fun job tonight, and that's to ask you to contribute and give to Jfan. I understand there are a lot of people in the audience who are from out of town. Is that right? How many? Raise hands, if you would, if you're out of town. Quite a few. A lot of people. Thank you for coming, and I guess I have to assume that the circumstances of your being here are not so favorable, that if it weren't for CAFO encroachment in your communities, you probably wouldn't be here. You may not be here tonight. meeting with the legal team and protecting your rights. And so, you know, those of you who are from out of town, you can tune out. You don't have to listen to the appeal. You're fighting your own battles. For the people that are here from Fairfield, I'll address my comments to you and ask you please to give for the sake of your homes, for your families, your quality of life, for your community. I would expect that the people who are visiting from out of town, if they had had a Jfan in their community, they would have been happy to have had a Jfan, protecting them, perhaps preventing what they're dealing with now. So those of us who are here, who are enjoying the protections that Jfan provides, please don't take that for granted. Please don't feel that someone else will take care of it. Chris isn't talking to me, I'm talking to you. Don't think the person next to you, maybe they'll write a check, they'll make a credit card donation. I think everyone bears the responsibility to help support Jfan. It's too important. Don't be that person that enjoys the benefit of the organization's work but doesn't contribute. And it doesn't take much. $5 a month, $10 a month, $20. I went onto the Jfan Iowa. Is it jfaniowa.org? I went on the site, took me 5 minutes. I give $20 a month to Jfan. I don't even think about it. Well, I think about it now, but generally I don't think about it. I don't miss it. I don't know it's gone or going, but I'm really happy to know that I'm supporting this organization, and I hope you will take advantage of that opportunity as well. Now, we have a few little sweeteners, as we have offered in the last few years, some premiums and incentives just to make the act of giving and more enjoyable, more fruitful, and so that you receive something in return. And what we have tonight are copies of Winona Howder's book, Foodopoly, which she's graciously donated, and Food and Water Watch have donated. So this is Foodopoly, the battle over the future of food and farming in America. We have a limited number of books, 40 books, but if you make a $25 contribution to Jfan tonight, you can have one of Winona's books, and if you'd like, I think she'll sign it after the session tonight, yeah? For only 25, should we, I mean, you ask him for more money when you sign the book. But $25 gets you in the door. Okay, also, we have a DVD of a documentary film called American Meat. And it is a compelling and informative look at the American meat industry. It's a balanced and solutions-oriented take on the shift from industrial livestock production to more sustainable practices. DVDs were donated by the director, Graham Merriweather. This is, I went on Rotten Tomatoes to check, this is a fresh-rated documentary, well-reviewed, worth watching. A $25 donation and this DVD is yours. And if you wanted more DVDs or more books, every $25 incremental contribution gets you another DVD or book. So I really implore you, for the love of your family, for the love of your community, for the love of your property values, for the love of God, make a donation to Jfan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and give generously. One more group of people that we want to recognize, and that's people that make their contributions, probably in addition to monetary contributions, make their contributions by volunteering at organizations such as this, activities such as this with Jfan. And I'll mention them briefly here, some of the volunteers that are here: David Ballou, Patrick Bissol, Dana Brecky, Jake Ingstrom, Alex Gabriel, Terry Ann Hobbenhofer, Kathy Jeffy, Daria Carriage, Fred Rosenberg, Dincy Rush, Carol Simmons, Jerry Stood, Madeline Stood, Cynthia Swanson, and Alyssa Wilkley. Thank you very much for volunteering for Jfan. Now we're at the point in our program where I want to introduce our keynote speaker, Winona Howder. Winona is the founder and executive director of Food and Water Watch, which is a national organization committed to telling the truth about factory farms. She's worked extensively on food, water, energy, and environmental issues at the national, state, and at local levels. Winona has experience in developing policy positions and legislative strategies, also is an accomplished organizer who's lobbied and developed grassroots field strategies and action plans. She previously has worked at the Union of Concerned Scientists as a senior organizer, where she coordinated broad-based grassroots sustainable energy campaigns in several states. She was the Environmental Policy Director of Citizen Action, where she worked with organization's 30 state-based groups. And before joining Food and Water Watch, she served as a Director of Public Citizens Energy and Environmental Program, where she focused on water, food, and energy policy. And as you heard, she's the author of her new book, Foodopoly: Battle Over the Future of Food and Farming in America, which is on sale outside, and she will sign after the conference ends here tonight. And tonight, she will explain to us why it's time to change business as usual in government policies affecting agriculture. Please join me in welcoming Winona Hoyter to Fairfield and to Jfan.
It's a thrill to be here with you tonight because you look like a group that has the fire to build the political power so we can get over business as usual, right? And just so you know that I'm not just another city slicker because I work in Washington, I grew up on a family farm. My family farm is 45 miles outside of Washington, and my husband still runs it today. So I want to talk about our food system, a food system that's out of control, an economic system that's out of control, and why we have CAFOs. In fact, why we have a food system that's making people sick. So we're going to start with a quiz, just to get in the spirit of talking about the Foodopoly. So I want to just shout out some questions, and you shout out some answers. It doesn't matter what you say. It's just to demonstrate the Foodopoly. What percentage of beer brands do the top 2 beer companies own? 80. A Belgium company and a company in the UK own all of these brands. Who owns 73% of bagels and English muffins? You'll notice there in the corner, it's Grupo Bimbo, a Mexican company that bought Sara Lee and a lot of other companies too. Who owns 85% of hummus and Mediterranean food when you go to the grocery store? Any ideas? It's PepsiCo. PepsiCo is the largest food company in the United States, and that's being generous because most of what Pepsi makes is not food. Who owns 73% of baby food? Nestle, the largest food company in the world. So we have about 20 companies that own most of the food in the grocery store. And why do we care? Well, economists for a long time have said that if any segment of the economy is controlled by four companies owning 40% or more, there's a lack of competition. And you can see that in the food system today, it's basically monolithic. Every category of food is controlled, a very high percentage, by just a few companies. So I want to talk about how we ended up with this kind of food system, because I can tell you that that ownership actually drives factory farms. And I'm going to talk about politics, and I don't want to insult anybody, so I'll let you know that I'm going to talk bad about both political parties tonight. But we're going to start with the Reagan administration because we don't have time to go back any farther. And a lot of the economic interests that helped get Ronald Reagan elected were interested in being able to get bigger, to become multinationals, to really control some segment of the economy. In writing Foodopoly, I had a chance to talk to Michael Perchuk, who actually was one of the commissioners at the Federal Trade Commission, one of the two agencies that oversees antitrust laws. And he told me about what happened when the Reagan administration came in, how his agency and the Department of Justice were basically eviscerated, budgets cut, staff cut, but most importantly, the definition of an antitrust violation was changed. It was all now to be based on efficiency, not the way antitrust had been looked at really since after World War II, when both political parties had agreed that competition in our economy was a good thing. Everything changed in the 1980s. Then things got a lot worse after the Clinton administration. You'll remember that the Clinton administration promoted the policies that ended up having the U.S. Join the World Trade Organization, to become a party to the North America Free Trade Agreement, and to get in line with all of these globalization policies. It meant that farm policy had to be deregulated. Now, there had been a lot of protective policies put into place to give farmers parity under Franklin Roosevelt's administration. Those had been chipped away at for decades, but the final chipping away and destruction came in that 1996 Farm Bill, when commodity policy was completely deregulated and the National Grain Reserve was taken away. And, you know, the devil's always in the detail. Now, one of the things that happened after the U.S. joined the World Trade Organization was that a lot of our food was outsourced after the Clinton administration. So that, for instance, today about 50% of fresh fruit comes from overseas, about 40% of vegetables. So we end up getting old, dirty food that often makes people sick. And it also makes it very difficult for farmers in the U.S. But something else very important happened from that deregulation of commodity policies. It made animal feed very cheap. So you can see 1992, about 30% of hogs raised on factory farms. 2004, 80%. By 2007, this is based on USDA statistics, and those are the most recent ones, 95% of hogs raised on factory farms, because farmers used to have to grow the feed, right, for the animals that they raised. But once cheap commodities, corn and soy, were available, it helped bring CAFOs to life. Now, some other things happened under the Clinton administration. Clinton pushed to have normal trade relations with China, giving it a most favored nation status. And one of the things that we don't often hear a lot about is the Financial Services Modernization Act, which made it possible for the deregulation of the banking industry. Now, you'll remember that in 1929, we all learned about the depression that was caused by the stock market crash, and a lot of protective policies were put into place under the Roosevelt administration so that the big banks couldn't abuse their customers' money. Now, under this Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999, all of those protections were taken away. And what it meant is that banks could engage in all sorts of commercial activities, like running investment firms and hedge funds. And it actually... That's right. But what happened is that it really changed the way that finance worked in this country. And I hope I don't make anybody mad, but you know, investors are a lot like car salesmen, right? And I'm talking about investment bankers. Let's talk about how money is made on Wall Street. Now, if you're a car salesman, you make your money from selling cars. Usually, if the car costs $15,000, $500 goes to the local distributor, and then the car salesman may earn about $100. But if you're an investment banker, you're selling companies for millions and hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars, and deals worth less than $1 billion might come with a 1% commission, while deals worth more than that might scale down to 0.1%, and even that is $50 million on a $50 billion deal. So you get the idea. These mergers, these big deals, make people on Wall Street lots of money. Now, let's think about the CEOs. Their compensation is linked to the price of stock of their company. Doesn't matter if the company performs well over time, right? It's all about the having double-digit profits for the next quarter. No emphasis is put on long-term sustainability of companies. And CEOs are actually incentivized, right, to put deals together. They get lavish pay and all sorts of bonuses. And what did they do after they merge? The first thing they do is cut costs by firing large numbers of people, right, and then often moving operations overseas. Now, there's a lot of pressure on the food industry to merge, which is why I'm bringing up all of these shenanigans on Wall Street. And, you know, if you sell something like peanut butter, there are only so many people who are going to get a craving for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And coming up with new products in the food industry is very expensive, and there are only so many ways to innovate, which is why we have 150 flavors of different kinds of chips. And the margin of profits in food sales is really small in comparison to other industries, because there's no equivalent, right, in the food industry to the iPhone or the Apple Watch or some other really high-priced, glitzy object. And so to attract new investors and to spur Wall Street trading, it's all about mergers and food companies getting bigger. And that's why over the last year, there were 75 large mergers in the food industry. We were having about 100 a year until the Great Recession happened, but now the mergers are beginning again. Now, there are a lot of ways that these deals get made. And I think one of the most interesting ones is the interlocking board of directors. And, you know, I think we have to start calling out the names of the companies that are causing all of these problems in our food system, and to recognize that a lot of them are connected to our financial service industry. So a recent study of global corporate control noted that firms exert control over other companies through this web of these boards, and there's direct and indirect relationships between the companies. And this actually reflects the United States, but a lot of these relationships are actually global. And a lot of the big investment companies serve on the boards of food companies. Now, we also see that food companies serve on one another's boards, and this means that a lot of these mergers and deals and CEOs changing jobs happens from the networking, because let's face it, corporate CEOs are no different than us. They go to board meetings, they see their colleagues, and they try to figure out how to get an advantage. And we also see that food companies are on the boards of a lot of nonprofits. And I don't mean Jfan or Food and Water Watch. I mean powerful nonprofits like the Council on Foreign Relations, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the American Meat Institute, the National Pork Board. You can see how these relationships benefit these different corporations. Now, these companies, as we all know, have had an enormous effect on our democracy, on our political system. The food industry is so large that they can dictate farm bill policy, food policy, advertising policy for food. They can manipulate nutrition standards, and they do it because over the last decade, they spent about $1.2 billion in lobbying, and this doesn't even count campaign contributions. Now, it's impossible to have a really meaningful conversation about what's wrong with our food system without talking about the largest grocery store in the nation, and that would be Walmart. 1 out of $3 is spent at Walmart, and they exert an enormous amount of influence over how our food is grown, how it's processed, how it's distributed. Because all of the big food companies, they're not worried about the consumers going to the grocery store as much as the biggest consumer of their products. Because even for a giant company like PepsiCo or Nestle, Walmart sells a lot of their profits, or a lot of their products in their stores. But we should realize that even Walmart serves at the interests of Wall Street. And we can see from this recent Wall Street Journal headline, this is about the July quarterly profits for Walmart, and you can see that they're criticized for having sales that just inched up. Their revenue rose only 2.8% to $120 billion, and that wasn't enough to make Wall Street very happy because they're striving for larger and larger profits. And what Walmart does is it increases the consolidation all the way down the food chain. And so we've seen major changes in the grocery industry. You know, before 1995, most people shopped at fairly local chains, grocery store chains. But once Walmart started selling groceries, it meant that all of the other grocery stores had to follow and consolidate, and are continuing to consolidate, so that in many areas of the country, 4 chains actually control 70 to 80% of sales. Here we can see overall in the United States, it's just over 50%. And that means that all the way down the food chain, stores have had to, or companies have had to get bigger and bigger to reduce the price of their products, to make Walmart happy, to help raise the profitability of a company like Walmart on Wall Street. And these are the top 20 companies that own 60% plus of the brands in the grocery store. And you can see the large meat companies are part of this chain of consolidation in the foodopoly. Now, Walmart needs to buy a lot of meat, right? They buy 1 billion pounds of beef every year at Walmart. They don't want to deal with small processors, certainly not ma and pa companies. So we've seen more and more consolidation in all of the animal meat industry, but you can see the tremendous control that Cargill, Tyson, JBS, and National Beef have. And we know what that means. In the end, it's farmers who suffer the most, right? Because the piece of the profit that actually goes to the farm is shrinking and shrinking. And for commodities, it's even more dramatic. When you buy a box of corn flakes at the store, only 4 or 5 cents goes to the commodity grower. When you buy a soda, the corn in the soda in the form of high fructose corn syrup nets the farmer about 2 cents out of each consumer dollar. 98% of the profit goes to the companies that make, market, and sell these products. Now, so what, you might say? You know, this is interesting, but how does it affect me? How does it affect my community? Well, there are a lot of ways, and of course, one of the ways we've been talking about tonight are CAFOs, but it also means that the cost of food, even though we hear food is cheap, and this slide is based on USDA statistics, so it's a little out of date, but we did a report at Food and Water Watch last year called Grocery Goliaths, and we found that actually the price of food is going way up, skyrocketing. And meanwhile, we see that the food companies are making a huge profit, about $77 billion in profits last year. Now, the grocery industry is all about capturing a shopper's mind, heart, and wallet. And it's kind of interesting. You might want to go to our website and look for that report because I don't have time to describe it tonight. But there's a lot of information about how you're being taken advantage of at the grocery store through their monthly promotions. They've even figured out that if they play classical music in a wine store, that people buy higher priced wine and more of it. And that's just one of the many, many tricks that they use. And then there's the bad health. I mean, we know everything about the grocery store, everything about our food system is about getting people to consume more and getting people to consume actually processed food. They figured out how to use fat, sugar, and salt to actually addict people to the foods that aren't good to them. There have been a number of excellent books written about that recently. Processed food is as addictive as cocaine or any other drug, and it's really criminal that the food industry has been allowed to do this. And children are especially vulnerable since each child sees about 5,000 junk food ads a day. And one of the tricks that is used in the grocery industry is that they actually have what they call captains, category captains. Kraft is a category captain. You can see that they make about 79% of, for instance, macaroni and cheese. They follow the cycle of food stamps and paychecks for low-income people through those store cards, and then they put those products on sale when they know that people are going to buy them. So there are a lot of really sly and nasty tricks that the grocery industry is using. Now, probably one of the biggest effects on the food system is the way that we're growing animals, right? And I know that Jfan is devoted to that issue, and it doesn't matter which type of animal that you're talking about. We are it is a food system that is unethical, and actually it is dangerous to the health of consumers as well. And I think the poultry industry, which is also moving into Iowa, is one of the most corrupt of the meat industries. An average contract grower makes between $12,000 and $25,000 a year because companies like Purdue and Tyson are sucking out that profit. So in a lot of ways, these CAFO owners are also, they're victimizing the community, and some of them are victims themselves. Now, one of the things that we need to do in these big overarching problems is to figure out how to break them down so they're real to people, and how we can get people re-engaged in our democracy. Because I would say that we're losing the ability, with all of the money in politics, with the way that people feel disempowered, we are not going to pass on a vital democracy to the next generation. And I think that's going to be key if we're going to take back the food system, if we're going to make the economic system fairer. And one of the ways that So we're always looking at ways to break down these issues so we can both educate the larger population about what's going on and take political action, because we have to take political action in the end if we're going to really change the structure of our nation. And so antibiotics and antibiotic resistance is one of the issues that we're finding. It's both important in trying to change the factory farm model. It's important to try to save antibiotics, right? Because we don't want to lose our most important drugs. And it's a way that we can begin to engage people in the political system. There has been legislation in Congress on antibiotics for the last 10 years. And the FDA has taken some weak action, always big loopholes for the pharmaceutical and meat industry. We would like to see some action eventually take place that would make the use of antibiotics on factory farms illegal. We believe that would help impact factory farms. So in an attempt to begin getting some accountability, we started a campaign this year to pass local resolutions against the use of antibiotics. This is both educational, it's symbolic, and it's also a way to begin educating policymakers and to take this to a higher level. And we've so far passed about 32 resolutions, some of them in big cities like Chicago. I believe there's one being considered here in Fairfield. And so that's one of the ways that we can begin to get people re-engaged. There are a lot of ways to re-engage in the political system in Iowa, though. There's going to be a giant pipeline to take fracked tar sand oil from North Dakota down to Texas. There are a lot of issues coming up, and there are a lot of reasons that a group like yours, with the energy, the dynamic leadership, can begin to find political candidates to run for office and to take your activism into politics. It's time to fight for our democracy. We need a fight in the courts, we need a fight in our communities, and we need to take this to the federal level and the state level. We have to take back our democracy if we're going to really pass a world that our children can live and thrive in. So I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
You know, there's only one power that's greater than the power of the giant multinational corporations today, and that's the power of the people. But to take the power of the people, we've got to change business as usual. Now, at this point, I'd like to turn the program back over to David Sykes, the Jfan president. He'll introduce the other members of the Iowa legal team that are committed to helping people protect themselves against the threats posed by CAFOs. So, David, you want to take the program at this point?
I want to shake things up a little bit and welcome some very special guests. We had the privilege today to have our second annual legal seminar with all of our clients in Iowa. That we had a seminar from 3 to 5:30, and a lot of groups came down, and a lot of them are here tonight. So it's running just a little late, but could all of our client groups from 9 counties please stand up? These individuals represent about 525 clients. We have cases in Batavia. We have the cases in Poweshiek County. We have cases in Appanoose and Davis County, Lynn County, Des Moines County, Jefferson County, Scott County, Adair and Union Counties, Boone County, Henry County. And I just want to say one more thing as I introduce Richard and Charlie. We've stopped a lot of CAFOs in Jefferson County. One of the ways we do that is by a deterrence. We take cases that have clients, that have groups that have organized. So for all of the Jefferson County communities that have CAFOs that are forming, we stand ready to help you once you organize. And when you're organizing, that's what Diane and her team does. It helps a local community organize. Once you're organized, a lot of options happen. So we're here to help, but that's the first step for you. And all of our clients, I thank you for coming. I hope you'll take all of this information home to the other members of your group. And I'd like to now turn to introduce to the stage Charlie Spear and Richard Middleton, both nationally known environmental attorneys that have been working tirelessly for many, many years, representing clients throughout the United States, helping communities. They're crusaders, they're dedicated. It's a total honor for me to have been able to bring them to Iowa and to have them here. Once again, I'd like to introduce to you now Charlie Spear and Richard Middleton.
All right, let's talk some shit. Last year, I wanted to meet the people from the integrators. I wanted to meet the contract growers that were here. I wanted to meet the members of Iowa Farm Bureau who were walking around with their caps pulled down low, sitting back up in the dark corners of the auditorium. Nobody would come forward. Well, I just want to let you all know, we're back. And this time, I'm reminded, as I told my clients that are here today, that David has associated us to work with. I'm reminded of the story of Jesus and the Last Supper. And Jesus was sitting at the Last Supper, and he looked at all his disciples, and he said, if you want to get in the picture, you got to get on this side of the table. Well, I'm happy to tell you that I'm sitting on the side of the table with these people right here, and we're going to do everything we can to make their life a lot better in the future. And And I understand from some of my clients that we have some representatives of the different counties here, and we have some representatives of some townships, and some people are here to learn, and they say they're on the fence. Well, I'm telling you what side of the table you ought to be on, and there ain't nothing in the middle of the road, as we say down in the swamps of Georgia, except yellow stripes and dead armadillos. So come on over with us. Now, when we talk about this, and that was a very inspiring talk that we just heard, I don't know what's going on in this country that I love so much, and I know David and Charlie and every one of the members of our team loves so much. When the largest pork producer in America can sell out with almost no opposition being raised to it, to the Chinese and to a company called Shineway, and the head of that company is a major member of the Communist Party Politburo, or whatever they call it in Beijing. And then they turn around and cut a deal with Putin and the Russians to sell them the pork. I guess the next group they're going to try to sell pork raised in this country to will be the members of ISIS. Now, here's the problem. They get our pork, and we are left with nothing but dead hogs and feces. That's the future if it keeps going like this in this country, and it can't be done. We are going to have to do something more significant, and that's why we are here at the invitation of David to do everything that we can for the citizens of Iowa that we're privileged enough to represent. And we had a great meeting today. I met so many fine folks and just reinforced everything that Charlie and I have been doing and what we've learned all over this country, that many of the people that are most flagrantly violated by big agriculture are the very people that have sustained the agricultural picture in this country for decades and generations. And many of the people that have been most flagrantly violated are those who are pictured as being in low-income communities or lower-income communities and who aren't well organized, mainly because, like many family farmers in this country, you have an independent spirit. And so they count on that to be helpful to them in running over you. Now we have groups like Jfan. We have these community groups that have gotten together, our various client groups here tonight, that can serve as a wonderful example of what happens when you do unite and you decide to do something very, very important. Look, Charlie will be the first to tell you, and he often starts his part of the talk like this. I'm going to steal it because we're late. If the regulators would just do their damn job, Charlie and I would be off trying lawsuits for something else. We wouldn't be here with you. You wouldn't be here. Jfan wouldn't need to exist, and everybody could go about their lives. But the problem is that regulators won't do what they're supposed to do, and they make it very easy for us because the arrogance of big agriculture is equaled by none, okay? They will come in and they will say the damnedest things. I'll give you one example. The head of Premium Standard Farms, Harvard graduate, MBA degree, had the audacity to sit in front of a jury in Kansas City, Missouri, and suggest to that jury that, yes, he knew that dust particles that came from the animal dander and the dust and the feed and the waste when it was drying would carry the chemical compounds of hog waste. And it would come out of the fans in the buildings, it would come off the lagoons, it would come from the land application, and it came even from the way that they handled the dead animals, whether they were composting them or stacking them up and sending them to a rendering plant. And he said, I know that the dust that the chemical compound's on, I know that it's carried by the wind, but I also know that that wind has never left the boundaries of a premium standard farm. I looked at Mr. John Meyer and I said, this was in front of the jury, and I said, Mr. Meyer, can you tell me how that wind is so smart that it knows to stop at the fence line? And he said, he looked at that jury just as sincerely as he could, which wasn't very much, and he said, I don't know how it happens like that, but it just does. So if you've got that corporate arrogance and you can think you can convince a jury that ended up not to be much of his peers, it didn't look like, of a point, and you can win your day, then everything is good for big agriculture. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not. I'm going to let Charlie talk to you all about some of the history of how this all got started, how we got started, for those of you who are with us for the first time. But I am so proud to stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, hand in hand with these folks that are here today that we have the privilege to represent. And I hope that more of you will also support their efforts and then your own to clean up this country. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Charlie Spear, and I want to thank David for putting the energy into this project that's making it work. I'd kind of wondered down in Missouri, just one state south, why I never got any calls from folks in Iowa. I figured everybody up here was just happy. There wasn't a problem up here. And I don't know why it took so long, but David reached out to us. He's been involved with us at every step. He's brought incredible energy to this project, and we couldn't be more excited about it. I'm not going to go through all the history because I know so many of you so well now. But you may hear some things about us. You may hear things about me from Missouri. One of the things they say down in Jefferson City at the legislature is that Charlie Spear came up with this new lawsuit. Never been done before. No, it was actually William Aldred in 1610 sued his neighbor for putting the pigsty too close to his house. I mean, being a good neighbor, there's nothing new about that. And that's really what these are about, is you're trying to civilize your neighbor for ruining your life. So that's been on the books. It was the first lawsuit that the King of England, King James, in 1610 allowed one citizen to sue another citizen. So it's been around forever, but it applies perfectly to this lawsuit in that they're destroying your quality of life. There's so much hokum and so many lies that we've... Well, let me go back to what else you might hear. They said that I filed lawsuits against farmers for combining at night. No. They said I've sued farmers, ranchers, for weaning in their calves and having them bald. No, I haven't done that. They said I'm anti-farmer. Well, all my clients are farmers. And one of the most insulting questions that we see from defense counsel over the years is they'll look at somebody that's lived on a century farm, 3 generations, 4 generations. We had a couple in North Missouri. They were the first white people to have an interest in the property. And they'll look at them and say, why don't you just move? What could be more insulting to people that have worked that land, inherited the land, and have a bond to that land? Some of the other things that we've come across in the last 15 years, and it's just mind-boggling that these folks can get away with it. One instance comes to mind. I got a call from a German engineer that started an American company. And he said, Charlie, I want to talk to you about my product. And I said, well, I'm not in the hog business. I don't know what I can do for you. And he said, well, I have, I lost the word, biodigester, that they methane digester, thank you, and gives off natural gas. We burn it and put electricity back into the grid that we don't use on the farm. And he said they're everywhere in Germany. You can't build one of these things if you don't have it in place in Germany. So he had this bright idea to come to America. He said, nobody has them. I'll sell them like hotcakes. They make money. After 5 years or so, they start making money over the original capital investment. We went up and looked at one in South Dakota. It was just as slick as it could be. No odor, generating electricity. But he went broke. Olaf was his name, because nobody would put it in. On that same trip up to South Dakota, which is a long way, by the way, Richard and I had the chance to meet with a fellow named Bob Gardner, and his company's Bob Gardner Industries. And this is probably in 2003, 2004, 8. And he developed this product where it's an electrical line that goes down the inside of the barn. And I forget if it was positive or negative ions that this thing generated and shot out, charged the dust particles, and they fall down to the ground. And he showed it to us. It worked. Warren Buffett was backing him, but nobody bought it. Until just recently, I saw an article, Smithfield, said that they were evaluating it, and lo and behold, they discovered that it improved the hog's health, so they could put on weight faster, made the air cleaner for the hogs. So they were going to do it. There are things that they can be doing to make your life better. I mean, this is different than should these facilities exist at all in this fashion. But our lawsuits are first and foremost, you're a bad neighbor. Secondly, you could be doing things to be a better neighbor. You just don't want to spend the money. You just don't want to do it. What else should I cover? I mean, we've covered.
Well,
so
how
much
about
today.
this? How about an invention that turns hog waste into potable water that you can drink? You might not want to, but you can drink it, and they can do it in 15 minutes. Known to industry in this country. You won't find it anywhere. We found it, and we're not in the industry. But things like the negative ionization wire system that Charlie's talking about, that's been known. They say they're going to put it in their barns in the Midwest, but they won't put it in their barns in the Southeast. What? They're only going to put it in where they've been caught litigating in the state of Missouri, and they also talked about bringing it maybe to Iowa. But these are all technologies that can be used. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
You did.
There are all these technologies that they could use if they just want to help you all, and they don't want to do it. Well, it's now come down to the final phase of the story. The last resort that my people have here is litigation. And we're prepared to go all out to teach them what they should have taught themselves.
And by the time folks come to us, they're at wit's end. They've tried everything. They've tried their politicians. They've tried organizing. They've tried everything. I forgot where I was going with that.
It's all failed.
So lawsuits are the last tool available. Yes, sir.
What's the right to farm amendment that's passed in Missouri due to your ability to represent people?
Great question. We argued that before the Missouri Supreme Court 2 months ago on a constitutional challenge. I don't want to jinx ourselves, but we thought the hearing went very, very well. And a nice, fine young lawyer, Jacob Byland for Cargill, argued it on the other side, and we're optimistic that we're going to get that overturned. And Missouri, you may know too, filed a, thank you, good thoughts, a constitutional amendment saying that farmers are good. I mean, it's just kind of a dumb law. But some of the groups like Jfan equivalent down there wanted to oppose it. Okay, thank you. The right to farm or the constitutional challenge?
We're going to have a question and answer session later. Let's go ahead and let them finish, and then we can turn in questions, and we'll take them later. If you want to take one, that's fine. But
Yeah, go ahead and take it, Charlie.
Yeah, well, we go.
Take them now.
Go ahead and.
Do the Reader's Digest version of what it is and your job and how it affects groups in Missouri, similar to what Jfan is trying to do here.
Excellent. The right to farm law was basically designed to limit our lawsuits. And in Jeff City, they called it the Charlie Spear Bill. I don't know whether to be flattered or offended. It passed. We thought it was fatally unconstitutional. We had a hearing before the Missouri Supreme Court, and we felt good about how the questioning went, how the proceedings
Well,
went.
what the challenge is, hold on. You need to know what it's about. What the challenge is, it changed damages from your ability to collect damages for loss of enjoyment of your own family farm and your home, your biggest investment of your life, to you could only get rental value for that property. Now, who the hell is going to rent a property across from a hog farm? But that's still what they came up with. That's the essence of the constitutional challenge. And then you can talk about the feel-good thing, make all farmers feel good. Well, they're all our clients, too.
Right, so we filed a constitutional challenge to that today with the Missouri Supreme Court. So we're fighting this on all levels. What we've learned in Missouri, fighting Smithfield Premium Standard Farms, the nation's largest hog producer, we bring here, and we're much more efficient, advanced in how we're prosecuting these lawsuits, so we're definitely miles ahead of where we started on this in 1995 in Missouri.
I'm going to just take a little liberty here. A lot of folks have a long drive home, and I see people having to leave. I'd like to thank all of you for staying late. I'd like to acknowledge just the tremendous experience and knowledge base that I think we've had this evening with our speakers, and we're going to continue our work. We'll see you all, if not sooner, next year. Have a very safe trip home, and thanks a lot for coming. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much. Good night. And it's time to change business as usual.